Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Invisible Condition. I'm your host, Jeff Pearson, and I am here to let you know that you are not alone. Okay, and in a world that it's easy to feel invisible, I see you. Okay, Invisible Condition. We're here. Here we go. And I have an amazing guest that I want to introduce you to, and I'm going to bring her on right now. Suzanna Price. Hello, Suzanna. Good morning.
Morning, Jeff.
I'm so glad you're here. It's been so fun talking to you, coming up to this show and learning about what we're going to be talking about today. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us about yourself, your family,
Sure.
all the good stuff?
Sure. So my name's Suzanna Price, and I have lived in Colorado all my life. My parents moved here when I was 2. I have a husband. We've been married almost 21 years, and we have a daughter who's 11. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to talk with you today.
I am so glad you're here. And what and so you moved here when you were 2. Where did you move from?
My parents were originally from Georgia, and then they spent a couple of years in the DC area and then moved to Denver and stayed.
So what brought you to Colorado? What brought them to Colorado? Like, how'd you land here?
My dad worked for the Bureau of Mines. He was a geologist. So he did
nice.
Early in his days with that work, they moved a few times, and he did a lot of field work. So he would be going out way out,
nice.
Where there was nobody and no development yet, and studying the land. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So where better? Come to Colorado.
Right.
There you go. Well, there you go. I'm so glad you did. So tell us, we're looking, I'm looking at you and your condition must be invisible. Imagine that, right? That's what we're here for, right? So
right.
tell us what we're going to be talking about today.
So it's my journey through many years and trials of, I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 23.
Okay.
And before that, I really just had no clue. I had a really inaccurate mental picture of what seizures were and what epilepsy meant. Because of course you don't know until you walk that path, right?
Right.
So it's a story about grappling with living with, what seemed to be uncurable health condition, something long-term that I was going to have to accept and live with, and, grappling with my faith and doubts and figuring out how to really live, even in the midst of that trial, and to choose joy. Yeah.
Yeah. So so up until 20, you said 23?
Right.
So up until 23, you were just a normal kid, normal high school student, college student, whatever. What no problem, no health issues or whatever significant, like not like this. What happened that, do you know if there was an event that happened that triggered that? Or
so the backstory is, when I was 19, I was in a really bad car accident. It was a rollover, and I had a traumatic brain injury and started seizing in the ER. So I was actually put in a medically induced coma for a time because they were trying to stabilize me and figure out what was going on. I had fractured my skull. I had fractured C1 in my neck. It's a wonder I wasn't paralyzed by that. So that was, that was what I viewed as, when they told me I had to take those, they put me on a medication that's a was an old seizure drug,
Yeah.
and I had to take it for a few months. And then I was told, well, you're stable and I could go off it. And what I never heard, or I never absorbed anyway, was that there was a risk of developing seizures for the next several years of life after you've had that kind of injury. But
Oh, yeah.
that, of course, was something I wanted to put behind me and move along. And
Sure.
then when I was 23 and getting my feet wet in the working world, I'd had, I'd had several episodes, which only looking back, I could recognize that they were minor seizures. And one day
Now that you know more, you can look back and know that's what that was.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, the symptoms and the spacing out and the bizarre uh, physical sensations,
Yeah.
but they would pass so quickly that I brushed it off.
Yeah, brushed it off like, "Oh, I just didn't get enough sleep. I didn't eat enough breakfast. I
Right.
didn't," right? It's just no big deal. It's
Yeah.
just I'm just lightheaded, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then one day I was working while I was working at the hospital, and then I had a much bigger episode and collapsed,
Mm,
and then had to be taken to the ER, and then a whole slew of tests started.
sure.
So that's when we discovered that I was actually having seizures, and the label that they gave them was partial complex seizures and partial
Okay.
simple seizures. So all of those strange feelings I'd had, and the moments when I'd spaced out and been, unable to talk for several seconds,
Yeah.
that's what was going on.
Huh. And so so what was that diagnosis like though? Like how did they, because I know people that it took years for them to be diagnosed with any kind of seizure
Right.
disorder or any kind of diagnosis. What did they did it sounds like it was pretty quick.
It was pretty quick. There were, the MRI and the CT and all of those things. I would what I didn't um, realize was how many of these tests I was going to have over the years. So pretty I got pretty used to those,
Yeah.
lying down in the machine and waiting. But they told me there was a small area of scarring in the left temporal lobe. That's the
Huh.
area where they first told me it was coming from. And that was actually pretty common for people who'd had a brain injury. And quite honestly, there are a lot of people who start having seizures that don't have any background or reason behind it,
Hmm.
or anything that would, there's nothing easy cookie cutter about any of this.
No. No, people, I mean, people can acquire a seizure disorder or even just have a seizure everyone. I mean, your system can get completely overloaded. I mean, I've no friends that have done that. They have no history of seizures and then they have,
Right,
a bunch of traumatic stuff happen in their life and seizure,
right,
So
right,
just let me I'm just gonna I have a question. I just want to address the live audience that's out there right now because I know that you are not the only, you are not alone in this, I'm sure. And I know there's
right,
people
right,
out there that probably know somebody that has had a seizure, has a history of seizure or seizure disorder. If there's anybody out there that's watching that has had experience with this, we would love to connect with you and interact with you in the comments. You're able to comment through Facebook most easily. I think you can comment through YouTube as well. So reach out. We'd love to hear from you. So as far as yeah, so there's all these different kinds of seizures. How do they narrow down what you had? I mean, okay, so now you've had seizures, but then every seizure is so different. How did they figure that out?
right. So the way they're classified is by the area of the brain where they originate. So a
Okay.
lot of us have, so I'll speak for myself. Before I was diagnosed, when I heard the word seizure, I guess I pictured what we have been often shown on television, which is
Yeah.
somebody's a convulsive state,
The
or
big, huge
falling
ones.
down,
Yeah.
yeah, falling down and twitching on the floor, and that is just one type of seizure. So if your
Yeah.
entire brain is misfiring, that's what it looks like, is one of the grand mals, or as it's called, a tonic-clonic seizure. Mine were not
Yeah.
like that. So mine, because they only came from one small region of the brain, the symptoms were different. So it affected my ability to, while they were happening, they were short-lived, but while they were happening, I couldn't communicate. I couldn't, I had no awareness of what was
Hmm.
going on. I only would feel it briefly beforehand. And then after the fact, I knew that it had one because I would feel so foggy.
Yeah. And so you were conscious through the whole thing, though. You
I
didn't, you,
was, yes, I was
yeah.
conscious. Just, I would make funny motions
Yeah.
and sometimes make funny noises.
Huh.
Um, Again, typical of my type of seizures, I would have a blank look on my face.
Yeah.
Sometimes do strange things like lip smacking or just mumbling nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But after the fact, I couldn't tell you what I'd said or been trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can relate. Since my last brain surgery, well, and leading up to it, I've had similar experiences, and I've probably had more over the years. Like you
Mm,
say, you looking back, you've
right.
had all these episodes, and you didn't know what they were. And honestly, probably looking back over the years, I have too. But I totally relate to what you're saying. I'll be,
Mm,
sitting on the couch, and my wife's sitting next to me, and all of a sudden it's like you feel like you lose 5 or 10 minutes. They're just gone, and
right.
you look over and go, oh, you're still here. Oh, hi, hello. And she's like, I've been here the whole time. you
Right.
know what you've been
And it,
doing.
yeah, it's very disconcerting.
Yeah,
And
it's a
it
little
feels,
weird. Yeah.
it feels like your mind is separated from your body. It's
Yeah,
so hard to put into words unless you felt it.
it really is. That's true. If you've not experienced it, it's almost impossible to make somebody understand, but you
Right.
don't have to understand. You just just be cool with it. I mean, you don't have to understand
Right.
everything to be empathetic.
Right.
So
Yes.
so what so obviously this condition over the years had impacted your family, right? I mean, you got married, you have
Right.
you have a daughter. So how did all that, you know impact that?
So you mean,
I mean,
so
so you got married, right? You started
right.
having
So,
this stuff at
well,
20s, and then
right. And my husband and I were not even married when my seizures started. We'd just gotten engaged. It
ah,
was just that time of excitement
yeah,
and the big plans and the dreams and the hopes.
right.
And we learned really fast what for better or worse means.
Phew, yeah,
I mean, that's no joke. We all
seriously.
you stand at the altar and you say that, you better be ready for whatever might be coming.
Well,
And
a lot of people don't
Mhm.
understand that because they haven't gone through something life changing like that.
Right,
So it's all relative. For us, for
right,
you, it was seizures. For me, it was brain surgery. For somebody else, it might be the car broke down.
mm,
It's all relative. But
right,
yeah, I get it though. Those vows, they have a different meaning after that. Yeah.
for sure, for sure. So that was a beginning of our life together, and for me, starting out, uh, it was just it was so heavy. It felt like such a heavy
Yeah.
weight, on my shoulders, and I didn't know how quite to process that. I mean, think about it. I mean, it felt very isolating. I didn't
Yeah.
know anybody else with epilepsy. I could hardly say the word. I just didn't
I,
wanna, call that, oh, it's whole that whole, "How long can I float down this river of denial?" 'Cause
yeah.
that's the real thing. And
Yeah.
so I guess initially, I wanted to just be told what medication to take, and I figured a neurologist was an expert at this, so they could help me, and I learned a whole lot about medical treatment and advocating for myself,
Right.
over the years. But
Yeah.
initially, I was put on the medication. I thought, "Well, I'll be okay," and I figured it was a fluke. I guess I wanted to think that it would
Yeah.
pass or not last long
This isn't
or
really a thing. Yeah.
right, right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I get it. I've
And
thought
this
the
was
same thing. Like, no, that was just a fluke. That was just a one-time thing.
yeah,
You don't actually have to worry about that.
right,
Yeah.
and this was a time when so remember, there was no social media, if you
Right.
can think
Yep.
back to those days. There was
Yeah.
no way to just communicate with someone on the snap of your fingers. I
No.
didn't like I said, I didn't have someone to walk alongside me who could say I've been there, and
Right.
so I felt, very alone.
Sure. Yeah. No, understandable. I can relate, and I know there's people out there that can relate too. I mean, this is a story that people need to hear, because I'm sure there's because that is, yeah, when even when it's something common. I mean, seizures are not
Right.
uncommon, but
Well, 1 in 26 people will be diagnosed in the US with epilepsy in their lifetime. 1 in
see,
26. So that's
exactly. That's
I mean,
ridiculously
look
common.
around.
Yes.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like in a classroom full of kids in public school that have a little bit, the class sizes, you look around, there's probably one that has it or might have it
Right,
in the future. Yeah, it's
right,
crazy.
right.
Man, yeah, this is
Mhm.
all good info. I'm gonna unfortunately we're already at another we got to take a commercial. We could keep rolling the whole time here, but we're gonna do a commercial real quick, and then we will be back here in just a second. I'm gonna do that, and then we will see you in a couple minutes. All right. Welcome back, everybody. We are talking with, here we go. We're talking with Suzanna Price. Hello. Welcome back, everybody. All right. Well, when we left off, we were talking about how common this is, and how, not so common as look to your right, look to your left. Somebody probably has one, but you said what, one in every 26, I think you said?
Right.
That's
1 in
crazy.
26. It is
That's
crazy, huh?
crazy. I never would have imagined it was that common. I knew that seizures were fairly common because when there's such a wide variety of types and whatever, I mean, surely they're pretty frequent, but man, I had no idea it was that common. So, man, so sometimes when, like, okay, somebody has a seizure brought on by stress, maybe somebody has one brought on by whatever, what would bring somebody to be diagnosed with it, like a seizure disorder? Because that's
Sure.
basically what you were diagnosed with. You
Right.
were diagnosed with this.
So epilepsy is defined as having at least two seizures with no other cause. For example, we've heard of people having a diabetic seizure, right?
Oh,
That's
sure.
related
Yeah.
to blood sugar, or
Mhm.
a seizure that's related to something. Say a really high fever can do that too, because that does strange things to your brain. And I'm accepting that as a truth of something that was happening in my body, and that I would have to learn to live with that,
Yeah.
and that I would have. I mean, there were limitations put when I was first diagnosed. I was told you can't drive. You can't drive for 3 months.
Oh,
It was 3 months was the first amount of time they told me, just to be
yeah.
safe, because you don't want to have a seizure behind the wheel.
No,
And
it'd be
so,
terrible.
no, and then, and I was it was a stage of life where I was just, like I said, getting.
You can't help it, but there's medications and drugs that get approved by the FDA for this, but then they figure out, oh, but it also works for this and this and this and this and this, but
Right.
specifically approved for that, but they still use it. So that's where that's where it gets a little scary. Like, okay, well, can we use it for that? Well, what's the side effects?
Right.
And are they worth it, for the benefit?
Right. That's the tricky part too, because uh,
Maybe.
which was worse for me? I needed some form of medication.
Yeah.
What we couldn't figure out, well, was which one would be the best, and I
Yeah.
was on at least 2 medications for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Um, if you look at the statistics of all the people with epilepsy, about a third of adults have what's known as drug-resistant epilepsy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I I had minimal success with most drugs,
Hmm.
but I was still having seizures. So nothing was 100% effective, and that's why
Interesting.
I had to give up driving altogether. I mean,
Yeah.
I went 16 years of my adult life being unable to drive.
Wow. Well, and
And
even if you are taking the drugs, there's nothing that says you might still have a seizure. I mean, the drugs aren't always 100%, right? It's not a
no, they're not.
guarantee.
I mean,
So,
they can dampen down the
yeah.
frequency and
Hmm.
intensity perhaps, but
Yeah.
sadly, it's a guessing game.
It can be.
Like for a lot of for a lot of health conditions, your body responds differently than mine to a given medication,
Right?
right? And then when
Exactly.
you get involved with brain, that's even more complicated.
Uh-huh.
So,
The brain is a very fickle animal. It does not
right.
like to be messed with. Yeah.
And so I hopped from one neurologist to another
Yep.
and learned that I needed one who was not just a neurologist in the broad term of that specialty, but really a seizure specialist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And did you find one?
I did. I
You
did.
said
I
when we
found
were talking, you threw out a funny word that I'd never heard before. What it was a
Oh, an epileptologist. Right. Right. It's a
What?
long word, but it's
Come on.
they are out there,
Yeah,
and that is what I needed.
that's amazing.
Um,
So how the heck did you find, like, that's got to be some trial and error, right? Going through
Very much so,
a
yes.
lot of stuff.
And that was one of the most frustrating things was
Yeah.
grappling with, okay, I needed an epilepsy specialist,
Uh-huh.
and then I need that doctor or practice to be under my insurance. And don't get me started on that.
Nope.
I
I
mean,
know. Yeah. Yes, I have paid way too much money to medical places and insurance companies, and yeah, exactly. Especially
yes,
somebody with something that's long term. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
we hopped, Wayne and Wayne was my rock. All through this, he went to every appointment with me.
That's awesome.
Um, I always had him by my side because when you're dealing with all of this, it can become really emotional, and
Yes.
it's hard to remember everything that was said in a doctor's appointment, at least for
Hmm.
me. And so I would always look at Wayne and say, "What did she say?" or "What did he say?" Or he would remind me, you know. And
Yeah.
so we traveled that road together, and I hopped from one neurologist to another.
Yeah.
I would look them up. I would look up who was who. Even in like that 5280 magazine about Denver, you read about the best
Yeah. The
doctors.
top 10, whatever. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I
Sure.
went and saw an epilepsy doctor that was listed in there. And it's not always, oftentimes it's a disappointing, sadly, statement of, well, we're doing the best we can, or there's not much other, I don't see much other treatment right now for you,
Yeah.
or here we can try this one if you want to add this one on to what you're already doing.
Yeah.
And so you're at the mercy of a lot of unknowns,
Yeah.
and what feels like, huh, are we just throwing darts while blindfolded
Let's
and
just throw a
trying
bunch
to
of mud at the wall and see what sticks, right?
hit
Yeah.
the target?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Totally. Yes, I agree. This most recent neurologist that I started seeing, yeah, same thing, but he was amazing because he knew he didn't know it all. So
mm,
that's the key, I think, is to get a neurosurgeon or a neurologist that is willing to admit that they're just practicing. It's
right.
just practicing medicine,
Yes.
So
Yes.
they're right there with you. They don't learn it all in med school. They learn from experience too.
Yeah.
So it's really not their fault. I mean, I can't
No.
blame, when we don't get the outcome we want, or something goes wonky with the medication, you can't totally throw them under the bus because they're kind of on this journey with you, but it is
Right.
frustrating. I totally get it.
Right.
It can be really rough.
Yeah.
Um, but with that in mind, I know this is going to be kind of a curveball question, but with all of this craziness, and I know we're getting to the best part of the story here in a second, but with all these seizures and stuff, was there anything during that time that you found yourself thankful for in the midst of it all?
Oh, sure. I learned to be thankful for, let me put it this way, you really learn who your friends are when you're
Hmm.
dealing with this kind of
Yes.
long-term condition, right? And so I learned first, to be okay talking about it,
Hmm.
and I learned who my people were, if that makes sense. I
I love
mean,
how you said that. Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
I told you, Wayne and I, we walked that road together and all the ups and downs, but and my family stood by me,
Yeah.
and then our church community was phenomenal.
Yes.
That's who I counted on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so nice. It's so nice to have that. And I know even if people feel like they're alone in a thing like that, there are so many people that want to help. Like
Right.
so many people that are just clamoring to do something. I mean, everybody wants to help. Um, I know it gets it gets a little tiresome when it's a continuing thing your whole life, but I mean, like when you come out of a surgery, when you find out a diagnosis, people just want to help, and that's awesome. The community that surrounds you is so cool, you
Right.
know. So
Right.
it's just out of curiosity. I mean, we got a couple more minutes, and then we're going to go to another commercial. But is there anything? And then we'll get to the really cool thing on the other side of the break, because I know we've got something really awesome about your story that I know that they don't yet. So uh, that we'll do in the next thing. But is there anything that you, with all those years that you couldn't drive, couldn't function normally, couldn't have a normal life, whatever that um, is there anything that you wish people knew that like from the outside, somebody that doesn't have something like this, that if you only knew this, you know.
Right. Right. I guess what I'd say about that is the little things are the big things, you know? I
Yeah.
I was so thankful for people who stepped up to the plate to take me where I needed to go, take me to
Hmm.
work, take me to the grocery store, and the hard part for me to understand was how much people really wanted to help. And
Yeah.
I had people who would I mean, I made new friends because of it,
Hmm.
and I had people who were, uh, retired part of our church community who wanted to help me out, and they said it blessed them to be the one helping,
Yeah.
and that was a whole new concept. I guess I had to
Yeah.
view it I had to take the other perspective of, yeah, I'm feeling helpless and frustrated by how am I gonna get to wherever I needed to go when there were people who it just really brought them joy to take me somewhere. So,
That's true. It's true. And I've been on both ends of that, being able to help somebody that's in a situation that needs help. And good Lord, over the years, God knows I've needed the help too. So it's really cool to get both those perspectives,
right,
because it opens
right.
your eyes.
It is eye-opening, and you realize that it's so true that none of us is no man or no woman is an island. We're just
Right?
not meant to walk alone,
No.
and I fully believe that more than ever after, dealing with this for so many years,
Yeah.
is that I think we're a little too oh gosh, our society loves our independence and our,
A little
pull
too
myself up
self-sufficient.
right, pull myself up by my bootstraps, but
Yeah.
that's not the way to go, I'm telling you.
No, sometimes you got to lean, man.
Right,
Sometimes you got to
you
lean.
do, you do.
And to have somebody to help you is huge. And I'm so glad that you were able to find that community where you are, because yeah, I mean, especially if you're part of a church family. I mean, I know not everybody is, but man, that was huge. That was probably my favorite part, was because they're so eager to help. They just want to help you, you
Yeah,
know.
me too.
So that's so cool. I love that. Um, Man, well, I tell you what, I'm going to go to one more break. We're going to do this one more time, and then we're going to come back and tell the really fun part of the story.
Sounds good.
So, yeah. So here we go. We'll be back in, let's see here. Where is it? right there. Caught me there for a second. All right. Hello. Welcome back. Welcome to live TV, everybody. I was just putting a piece of paper behind there. Got up. And that's when we're back. Oh, awesome. So, Suzanna, what is the part of the story that you have not told us yet? This is so cool. I know this is not everybody's story, but like I said, everybody's story is different, right? Everybody's an individual. And this is super exciting. What kind of the next part? So go ahead.
So, and I wrote about this more extensively when I wrote my memoir, but I finally found some excellent epilepsy specialists out at University Hospital, which is where they do a lot of research.
Yes.
And a lot of things like double-blind drug studies and searching and studying the next best treatments for epilepsy. So that was where I found the doctors that I wanted to stick with. And I love that they worked as a team. So it was no one person, no one doctor saying, oh, this is the treatment for you, because they all put their heads together. So I had a main neurologist that I would see there, but all the other ones would have input, if that makes sense. So I think that's fantastic, because, you put that many educated minds together and you can come up with some more options, right?
Right.
So at one point, so I did some inpatient hospital stays that were, just to be honest, horrible. Not because of the hospital, but because of the nature of the beast. Because everything, to find the right treatment, we need to know specifically where your seizures are originating. And then that becomes the baseline for what's your best treatment. So I had I had these appointments. So I did this a couple of times, where you go in the epilepsy monitoring unit, get a bunch of electrodes put on your head so that you're getting a constant streaming electroencephalogram, an EEG. And then the hope is that you will have seizures, maybe multiple seizures, and capture some good data about those, and then use that as the springboard to determine the next ideal treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point I had that test done, and it was not fun, but I made, I had to make the best of it. Like I'd learned to do, you take books
Yes.
and crosswords and things to fill the time.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting experience. I was, to say the least, I was taken off my medication in order to provoke the seizures and gather more data. And at one point I was told that I could have a lobectomy and have part of my brain. Yeah, I'm not making this up.
What is that? Explain. Tell the people what that is.
Your brain is divided into different lobes that each have their own function. And the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe and the occipital. So I was told, well, you can have the whole lobe of your brain removed. And I thought, no, thank you. And I mean, not even, I had no words,
Are we there yet? Come on.
Yeah. I said, oh man. I mean, and I said, never, ever will I do that. And so watch what you say, because you shouldn't say never. But as a few years passed, and I went in for some more testing. And by this time, I mean, I'd gotten used to this. I mean, I'd learned how to navigate the ups and downs of living with epilepsy. And fortunately, by that time, we did find a combination of meds that reduced my seizures greatly.
Yes.
I was still having them, but most of them, bizarrely, were in my sleep.
Oh my gosh.
So my husband knew I was having them. I would sometimes know that I'd had one, but usually Wayne was the reason I knew I'd had them overnight.
Yeah.
And while that did help somewhat, because it didn't cause me so much daytime stress of wondering when the next seizure was,
right,
it's still not a good situation when you don't want your brain to keep misfiring. One of the known phenomenon with epilepsy is that seizures beget seizures. So the more you have, the more likely you are to have, because the brain learns that misfiring. That is what's happening. So I was ready for something different.
Right, totally.
And when I went back in to the epilepsy monitoring unit, I had what they called a phase 2 brain study.
Okay.
So I had, I don't know, 12 or 14, 15 holes drilled in my head. And there were dozens and dozens of wires implanted deeply into my brain in the area where the seizures were thought to be originating. And then we waited for the seizures to happen.
Still not on your meds, right?
So it was off the meds. So everything.
So you're kind of hoping that one would crop up so you could see where it's coming from.
Right. Yeah. And everything became it. I tell you, it showed that the meds were doing something, because whenever I had these drug studies or the brain studies, if I was off those meds, the seizures would be much more intense and really leave me so wiped out. But I knew I could have more options if I could get through that. So when I had that brain study done, the phase 2, I didn't know. Again, I was going in the hospital not knowing how long I would be there. People be there for a matter of days. I had heard of people being there 2 weeks, 3 weeks, which sounded horrible to me,
Been
and
there.
was
Yeah.
I prayed that that would not be my experience. But you just go in without knowing, and I knew I was in good hands. And again, we just relied so much on our friends and family for help. We needed help. Our daughter she was in kindergarten, I guess, by this time.
Mhm.
And so I got through that phase 2, and fortunately, I started having seizures almost right away.
Yeah,
I
so they
needed
could figure it out.
implanted.
Sure.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
got some really good data, and they told me, "You are a textbook candidate for what's called a laser ablation." And so this is a newer type of surgery, and compared to what I'd been told years ago about you can have a lobectomy,
Yep.
and this sounded so much more appealing.
Yeah.
So what happens is there is a laser guided directly into the area of the brain where the seizures are originating,
Mhm.
and the laser is heated to a certain temperature, and you have a hole drilled in your head. And they were explaining all this to me so I could understand and kind of grapple with, did I want to go through with this?
Yeah.
And then it heats to a certain temperature and essentially kills that area of the brain that has been misfiring
Huh.
and causing so many seizures. So when I heard that, I thought it seemed like so many mental pictures
Yeah.
flashed through my mind from all the years and all the horrendous experiences I'd had. And by that point, it no longer sounded scary. It just sounded like this could be a breath of fresh air for
Like
me.
hope. Yeah.
Right, right. And I'd never given up hope, and I'd never stopped just asking and seeking and praying like the word of God says. And
Yeah.
I kept asking, and I leaned on people around me, and I said, "You know what? It's time."
And
So
what happened?
I went in for that surgery on February 5th of 2018, and they said it looked like that it was a success. It
Yay.
I
Yeah.
was only in the hospital one night,
Wow.
and so I was tired, and I had some headaches, and I had a few other things to deal with. But after that, I was sort of felt like I was holding my breath,
Yeah.
just counting,
Just waiting for the next
right,
yeah.
waiting to see, and only time would tell. But little by little, I started counting days that I had been seizure free,
Yeah.
and then the days became weeks, and then it was, "Oh, I'm a month out. This is amazing," you know?
That's
I
incredible.
it was again, it's hard to put into words how incredible it felt after so many years of living with that expectation of when the next one was coming,
Yeah. Yeah.
because, the day by day and week by week, and then before I knew it, um, I was 3 months out, and I was having an appointment with my neurologist, and I was told that I could drive again, and I thought, "What?" I
That's
mean,
amazing.
I had, like I said,
Got your life back.
I'd gotten so used to getting rides, uh, it was almost no big deal anymore,
Yeah.
but that was incredible. So, I got to learn to drive the the wake, and cars are made so much differently than they used to, so that was a funny adventure, uh, learning how to drive again, feeling so giddy like I did
Right?
when I was 16, you know?
That's amazing.
Mm.
Oh my gosh. And with all of this story, you wrote your memoir. We don't have a lot of time left. We
I
got only
did.
a couple minutes left, but I want to make
Right.
sure that we get that out there and we'll put that in the, we'll attach that so people can order it if
Sure.
they want to read. But
Yeah. So
what
this,
you got a
yeah, this
copy
is
of it
it
right there?
right here, called Seized and
Awesome.
Driven.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
So it was,
Man.
I had been I kept journals. I wrote a
Yeah.
lot over the years. That was one of my ways of just expressing, and it was therapeutic for me. I
Yeah.
never thought I'd share that with anyone because it was very private. I mean,
It
all
is.
my
It's huge.
emotional vomiting, you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of my difficulties and trials and pains, and I had written them. But after the surgery, as time went on and I was living this whole new life, I thought this is too good to keep to myself, you know?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I started amassing a collection of all of my journals and went through them chronologically, took bits and pieces, and I
Oh
started
man,
writing the memoir starting from the beginning.
that's amazing.
So
That is awesome. And we can get that where? That book is
it's
available.
it's on Amazon. There's paperback. It's on Amazon Kindle.
Nice.
And then, of course, I've got copies if you're local and you want a copy, I can
That's
definitely
amazing.
provide that.
I love it. That is such a cool ending to the story, right? I mean, your story's not over, but you know what I mean? Like it's a
Right,
really awesome
right.
end
It's
to
a
that chapter,
renewal.
I should say.
I have to tell you, it's been mind-boggling, just the way it's a gift from God, and I don't wanna ever, ever take a day of life for granted that I can say
Amen. Totally.
I'm living without those seizures, and I feel like it's like I said, it's too good not to share,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I've been given a wonderful new lease on life.
exactly. I'm so thankful that you put it in book form so people could read about it because it's a story that needs to be told. And
Mhm.
it's awesome. And I'm very excited that that got out there because books are a very powerful way of getting the message out. So
Right.
that is so cool. And I wish we could talk for another hour, but we are out of time, unfortunately. So I thank you, Susanna. I am so thankful that you were willing to
Of
come and
course.
tell your story.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Jeff. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
this.
much. And
Yeah.
don't go away, but I'll talk to you in just a second. But thank you so
Sounds
much
good.
for being here.
You're very welcome.
All right, everybody, that is it for today. We are out of time, unfortunately. Man, I love her story. Next week, or not next week, Friday. Friday is actually a recorded show, but you can still comment and talk to us through the chat. It's going to be Ashley Kelly who's going to be talking to us about POTS, which I had no idea what that was, but you're going to learn too. It's going to be awesome. And we will see you on Friday. Thank you for watching, everybody.